Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to acknowledge the staff that have worked on this and the many workshops and everything that has led up to today. I welcome it because I think it's one of the good things that comes out of amalgamation, that you can actually take a regional-wide approach and really begin to look at some of the challenges, particularly around renewals and issues around depreciation and so forth, which we've had sort of varying performance on to date. I think the fact that it's not just looking at the geographical communities is really important. It's recognising the communities of interest that we have. So I welcome it. It gives us the opportunity to really look sensibly at the type of infrastructure that we need to sustain us into the future. And I think that the work that you've referred to already around sporting facilities and codes and so forth is going to be another critically important piece of work. And I acknowledge again the work that you've all done on bringing that together. The concern that I've got, and I'm more than happy to move this because I've seen the background to the work that's taken to date, but in terms of getting acceptance within the community, I just want you to pause and comment for a moment on the issue. You know, the challenge that we have is that challenge of growth, which is a good challenge, but within the difficult funding environment we're in, are you at all concerned that in order that we can responsibly meet those growth requirements, particularly in greenfield areas, that we are going to have political challenges emerging in perhaps some of the traditional areas, and I'm thinking particularly of the central area. Would you like to comment on that? Because I think it's better to identify the challenge so that we can respond to it effectively rather than brush it under the carpet, so to speak, and just wait for it to bite us at some point.
I mean, it is a challenge, obviously, the issue for built-up urban communities and, you know, as opposed to areas of growth and the priority tending to go to the areas of growth. And I guess this is where there are a number of things happening within council that potentially can incentivise those communities in urban areas where there is opportunity for optimisation, where they could look at, you know, existing assets that perhaps are not performing as well, and is there opportunity to optimise those, to reinvest back into their communities with new investment. There's also the opportunity for partnership, so where again it's not necessarily the ratepayer that has to fund it, but is there a way that we can partner with another provider to get a good outcome, and local boards will have that ability to do that with a range of tools that within their toolkit, including the local board capital fund, which I know the finance team are working on. So I think there are some things, but look, it is a challenge, and I guess that's why we are aiming with this regional network plan to at least create some coherency and transparency around the process. And even those boards that have recognised they're not getting much through this plan did acknowledge that it was at least providing a transparent approach, and they appreciated that, even if for their communities it may mean nothing in the immediate future.
I really welcome the frank response that we've had on this, because I think this is the right approach. This is the right way to go. But where we've had where we haven't, it's a really good way of turning traditional models for local government on its head and looking at those new partnerships. But we're not good at communicating that stuff, and I'm really wondering whether Dean would like to respond. This does represent change, so how can we get ahead of the game in terms of the communication as we go out into the community with this, to make sure that we have the public understand that this is an opportunity. It's not punitive, it's just an opportunity for looking at those things that are the glue in our community that bring people together and participate together. How can we convey that better than we have done in the past?
So I think that's one of our inherent challenges. I suspect we shouldn't underestimate the importance of local boards in that discussion that we have with our communities, and certainly through the regional representation around this table. But the work that we do with specific interest groups, like the sports representative groups has been particularly important, hasn't it, in the way that we've understood what the community wants, what it needs, and how we start to plan for those, and we can do the same through each of our community facility types. So look, how we do better at it, you know, Liz and your team, you might want to also reflect on that.
I think some of it is about talking about some of the partnerships we've got already and some of the successful forums like we do in the parks area, where we've got clear forums of community and council partnering on parks and maintenance development. It's kind of going, this is what the future looks like, and here is the future, and these people are doing it already. And I think for communities, practical examples of how these things work are the best way to communicate them, rather than talking the word of partnership, but showing what that looks like.
A picture of it.
Yeah,
And
show
a
a picture
willingness
of it. I think
to,
that's what we need to do.
a willingness to engage in the fact that the way that we, whether it's an asset or a non-asset solution, the way that we engage in that discussion may mean that what they enjoyed previously and it looked exactly like this may not be what the right solution is going forward into the future. And you can see that in the way that we're starting to design our facilities now. They tend to be more multi-purpose. That might be a little bit back to the future, but they are more multi-purpose rather than single-purpose. So it's engaging with the community about what they need, but also taking them on that journey. And we do have a lot of forum for it, but look, we're always looking to do it better, so that's taken on board.
I feel that we're still, on some of these things, working in silos, that on the rating issue, which I feel quite strongly about, I recognise that there's going to be need for change in lots of things that we do. But I'd like to feel that we can start, what I'm seeing as the opportunity for operational rationalisation and some savings, which don't necessarily mean a loss of service for our communities. I would really like to start seeing from our communications team the way that we can start linking this together, so that we don't just go and have a discussion about rates and then go and have a discussion about this, and that we actually start bringing it in a holistic way. And maybe this isn't the appropriate forum to have a discussion around that, but I don't want to set up these good folk who've done some excellent work on this up for disappointment should the mood be one or not as receptive as it could be.
Okay,
So I think we've got a responsibility to manage that.
Thank you. So
Agreed.
we've got, sorry, you want to speak further?
No, I was just agreeing. We have a responsibility to communicate it. This is a very important input into how we plan and understand what those demographic changes are and changes in need and expectation are, and how we communicate that and ensure that we bring the two together, and the community's willingness to pay is a critical, or alternative funding, whatever, delivery models, that's all part of that equation. So I absolutely understand.
Councillor Crone?
Thank you. I think it's fantastic that you included local board feedback in its entirety. I think that was a good move in the interest of transparency, and there'd be all local boards that would wish things to be further up on the list than lower, and not so much on the to be investigated, but up there with the doing or will do. I just picking up on the conversation just now, Councillor Fletcher, Dean, in regards to demographic change and growth. So the action plan's to be updated annually. What does that mean in terms of updated? Noting that we all have local boards wishing to have their investigated matters up the list. And understanding the pressures of growth, the levers of growth, will you deploy the same measurements or metrics that you've been using to put this together again in entirety for that annual update? So
the updating or reviewing of the action plan is very much an operational activity. So as we deliver actions and we get the findings and the results of that, then we need, other things will come to the top of the list. Things will start to get delivered because we've identified what the appropriate solution is. So it needs to be constantly kind of updated as actions get delivered. responses are determined and decisions are made about what the appropriate response is, and local boards will be absolutely involved in all of those sorts of processes. So it's important that we're just reflecting the change that we're getting as we investigate things, find out what the appropriate answer is. So it is an iterative and ongoing process. It doesn't require, I don't believe, a massive political process to be doing that, because it is an operational action plan. The strategic part of the document is the network plan itself, which sets the provision frameworks and the policy position about why we're involved in facilities and what we're trying to achieve through them, and the provision frameworks that set the level of service provision, if you like. Yeah, that's the strategic end of it.
Thank you. Councillor Webster.
Yes, thank you very much. This is fantastic. And hopefully, I mean, this will also underpin some of that asset optimisation work that
Absolutely.
the council is going to be doing. I see venues for hire 135 in Rodney and Franklin, and you've got here visits per month very significantly between facilities from 300 to 20,000. I'd suggest 300's being a bit generous on one or two of the halls, because I think, as I've said before, as communities are changing, the need for that local hall is no longer as much as it used to be. I am always a bit weary when I hear that you're going to have another look at lease issues. So I wouldn't mind having an offline chat with you about that, because some of the leases that have been going for years, the council's now getting involved in, and people are finding it very difficult. I heard recently of a lease that rather than give the community the lease or re-sign the lease, they want them to set up an incorporated society, and you know, it's like the donkey park, but we won't go there. You know, just in the facilities here, schedule of community facilities, I see that there's one or two pools that you've got attached to schools, so presumably they're not council pools.
Through the chair, there's two swimming pools in our network that are not council owned, so that is Mount Albert Aquatic Centre, which is owned by a trust and it's located on Mount Albert Grammar School, and the other is the Sacred Heart Aquatic Centre, which is located on the Sacred Heart College grounds.
Yeah.
Both of those facilities provide significant community access, whether it be just general public access or for sports groups to be able to achieve their outcomes. So they're considered part of our network, and we have contracts for that ongoing access.
Okay, thanks. I mean, everyone forgets actually Maharangi College have got a pool that can be used at times by community. So although everyone says we haven't got a pool, there is one. I know it's limited at times, but it is a pool. So no, this is really good, and it's great to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I've got a few things, if you don't mind. I mean, just on those pools, I think we need to be really looking at doing more partnerships with school pools. I think we could really leverage off those, and that provides little local pools, and it's already built, and there's a shed thing. So, and there's a couple I could tell you about. Inconsistency that I'm not quite sure of. On the maps, we talk about community centres. On page 12, we talk about community centres, but in the list, it says community house. And I know one in particular in Ranui is, they call themselves a community house, but it's got community centre all over, it's got community centre on the council sign, and it gets quite confusing, and some people in the community houses get really annoyed. So it'd be really good to just know what you mean, because you even say they're from little bungalows to bigger. So what are they, and how are we supposed to relate to that? So they're either community houses or they're community centres, but can we just, have an understanding?
There is a definition within the plan that it tries to embrace, and we've kind of used it generically as community centre, and it ranges from houses to hubs, and there's a range of colloquial terms people use, so we tried to capture all that, but the over umbrella term is community centre.
Okay, the other one is on page 7 in attachment B, and you talk about Pa Homestead. I mean, we all know that we'd love to have a function space so they could be sustainable. We've got 300,000 in here, but we know we can't build anything because of a tree. So is this realistic to put this in here, or are we going to use 300,000 to try and, sort out the tree business? It just seems like if we can't do it, which we've been told, it's just not possible with a tree, then why have we got it in there? Or are we just hoping?
I think that actually we may need to review that action as to whether, because I think decision, Dean, just through you, has already been made around how to support Pa Homestead through its aspirations for a function centre, has it not?
So
LTP
the
process.
decision was made to continue underwriting the cost of delivering that service through Pa Homestead.
Yes.
You made that decision.
Yes, that's why I don't understand.
This is a level of detail that I haven't picked up, and so we'll just have a look if this contribution is relevant, as to whether this contribution is relevant or not. So, Councillor Cooper, can I undertake to come back to you on that after
You
I've
can
talked
deal
about
with
it
it. I mean, and I'm sure Councillor Casey and Councillor Fletcher want to know what's really happening too, but it's just, if there's 300,000 that you're not going to use there,
we'll use it
somewhere else.
But
Dean,
it
through,
looks like Liz has
just,
got
sorry,
an
I
answer.
have got the answer to that, sorry,
Oh, sorry.
Anita was aware of that. That money that's reflected in that is actually what's in the current LTP, the decision was made by the governing body as part of that LTP round, so that's the money in the underwrite you're talking about, that's what that
That's-
300 is.
oh, so
one and
that's
the
not
same,
for
is
the
it?
upgrade.
Yeah, no,
So it's just misleading.
Yep.
Okay, and the other comment I just want to make is around Councillor Fletcher's comment around being holistic and, it's not about rates. Well, no, we've done everything in a holistic fashion right through the LTP, and then people vote about, oh, this is the rate. So I don't know how we can address that. It's going to be a political decision in the end if people want to make it about rates, even though we go through a whole process for over a year of looking at it holistically, looking at it for growth projections, etc., etc. You can't have it both ways. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Darby?
Look, I just
I don't vote for it anyway.
thanks to this team on this. I just noticed in the attachment B, I think it is, there's a lot of, under the function category, there's a lot of blanks that it hasn't been identified as either local, destination or regional. Is there a reason behind that?
that's in relation to the libraries, I believe.
Yeah, a lot more than libraries. There's arts facilities, and is it just libraries? Is it? You could be right.
I think it's primarily libraries, yeah, and all libraries are categorised as local.
Okay, and I noticed the new Albany pool doesn't appear to be listed. Is that because it's not a finished project
It's
and
on
it comes
page
in
8. Page 8 of
on 17? It should be on page 17
It's on page
or the
8.
agenda 55.
8.
Section 98.
Page 8.
Okay, it's there. I won't look for it. You've told me it's there, and that is a regional facility. That's identified as a destination or regional facility. I would assume.
Through the
'Cause-
chair, I actually think it's more of a local facility, so about providing for local needs. There is a regional facility not too far away from it. at the moment.
The business case for that pool
That's what I'm just looking
said it was a regional facility. So if the business case for the funding relied on putting a lot of weight on regional, then surely it should show up as a regional. You can't ignore how it got funded.
He's
Through the
quite
chair,
correct.
All the funding, as I understand it, above $1 million does come from the governing body, so that doesn't,
And it was put up as the business case is quite correct, was as a regional.
I'll follow that through.
Thank you.
The Upper Harbour Board, the Millennium Centre pool, is that, I'm just curious,
Through the chair, that's part of
Oh, it's
actions to
there.
be
Yeah, it's
completed,
there.
that
Yeah, it's there. It's
recently are
okay.
due to be
Yeah.
completed, so it's
Yeah.
action 19.
okay, then no other speakers or questions? Well, I'd just say thank you for the sterling job you've done on this. It's
Yeah.
huge, it's mammoth.
A lot of
And
lists.
I think it really will put us in a good place for the future because it's, as Councillor Fletcher said, it's that renewal or depreciation and knowing and making sure that everything's done in a timely manner with our sparring resources. So, yeah, thank you very much. With that, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.